and welcome to this virtual session. We're glad you can join us today. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items we'd like to go over with you now. Firstly, you can resize the webinar windows to cater to your viewing preferences. You can maximise, minimise and drag the windows to your preferred viewing size. If you look at the bottom middle of your screen, you can click on the widgets that you'll need to get the most out of this virtual experience. Secondly, Microsoft specialists are on hand to answer your questions in real time. So feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A window and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Lastly, we've provided some additional resources for you to supplement your learning. You can access them by clicking on the links in this section. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our speakers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of SC 900, Microsoft Security, Compliance, and Identity Fundamentals. I'm excited to have you all back for another full day of security and compliance fun. My name is Chelsea Lee, and I'm so excited to be back here again with you today. And oh boy, did we learn a lot in part 1. We looked at all sorts of different security concepts like zero trust and the shared responsibility model. And I mean, we even had the opportunity to review some of the different security and governance solutions inside of Azure, like the network security groups or key vaults, as well as the security center. We actually left off right in the middle of Module 3, and that's where we're going to pick up today. The second half of Module 3 is all about security in your M365 environment. And then we have one more module in this class where we're going to look at compliance and internal governance tools for your M365 environment and your organization. We have a lot to cover today, so why don't we go ahead and get right to it. Ooh, one other thing. All of the material for today's session, as well as everything we covered in part 1, can be found at the free learning path at Microsoft Learn, and that's aka.ms/scfunpath. Module 3 is all about security capabilities in Microsoft 365. So we're going to pick up with Lesson 4, where we'll explore Microsoft Defender and how to integrate your services. We'll also look how Microsoft Intune can help protect your cloud applications. So why don't we go ahead and get started by looking at Microsoft 365 Defender. Now, attackers don't respect domain boundaries. They move fast across applications, endpoints, user identities, and data domains. And what they do is they establish a foothold, and they'll move laterally and live off the land. And to defend that landscape, well, that can be challenging. First, the amount of threat signals is just enormous, and it's exhausting your security team, which is already stretched to its limits. And this can cause alert fatigue. And they have to normalize and analyze it all in a timely fashion. And you know what? That's just impossible. And then signals across domains are often viewed in isolation. So your security teams can't see that lateral movement and persistence, much less see it in an overall context. And domain-based point solutions are often siloed with different teams working in each. So that context just isn't there, and it takes way too long to put the pieces together. Which brings us to my last point. When perimeter protection is domain-based, that means your response is too. If we only understand threat protection within the boundaries of a single domain, well, you may not discover or understand or be able to fix other problems that come along with it. Microsoft 365 Defender is an integrated cross-domain threat detection and response solution. It provides coordinated and automatic defense across all your service domains, and it's there to block threats before they become attacks. And in order to reduce signal fatigue, it automatically normalizes raw signal data from those domains. It's then analyzing that data and correlates it into incidents. Then what it's doing is it's providing context to those signals so that your security teams can understand the story that the alerts are telling them. There's an all-in-one dashboard that requires no specific expertise or customization. And Microsoft 365 Defender can stop attacks and persistence before they even happen across all of your domains. it automatically makes an enormous amount of normalized threat data available without the painful and time-consuming task of analyzing all of it. And this allows your security teams to leverage that over those threats before they become attacks. Microsoft 365 Defender removes the confusion and clutter of those siloed security portals. This one solution that brings all of your threat data together gives you a rapid and complete response. For example, Microsoft 365 Defender automatically correlates domain-level signal data into incidents to give your security teams a full attack timeline. Plus, you'll have a complete view of the affected assets, including the identities, the endpoints, and those mailboxes that were infected. You'll also get recommendations for triaging the damage quickly. Additionally, it will automatically uncover connections between alerts across security domains to enable responses across the entire attack and remediate all the damage, including persistence. This self-healing process handles both the mundane and the complex remediations. And last, automation and the artificial intelligence frees up your security team to focus on hunting for sophisticated attacks using the amount of data and the wealth of data that Microsoft 365 Defender provides. They can use their own organizational expertise and knowledge of internal behaviors to investigate and uncover the most sophisticated breaches, and it doesn't require any type of special skills or expertise to get started. And your security teams can build out their own custom workflows or even adjust some of the metrics to change the way that Microsoft 365 Defender protects your organization. And as a result, security teams now have the capability to focus on what really matters, keeping your organization safe. In this section, we'll discuss the 4 areas of your organization that Defender can help you protect. This is a key area to remember. Defender can help you protect your identities, your endpoints, your applications, and your email and collaboration tools. Let's start with Microsoft Defender for Identity. And if you've been working with Microsoft products for a while now, you may recognize the service as Azure Advanced Threat Protection, or Azure ATP. But the way that Defender for Identity works is that it's using your Active Directory data to constantly scan your environment and look for those threats. And one of the ways that Defender for Identity protects you against threats is by monitoring all of your users and their day-to-day activities. And what's happening behind the scenes is that Defender is building a baseline for normal activity. And so that way, if you have a user or let's say a group that's doing something that's a little bit out of the norm, Defender is going to be the first one to alert you that something's not right. And that way you can dig a little bit deeper for finding a potential threat. So let's say, for example, we have an employee named James. And they are always accessing their corporate account with their work phone or their corporate device. And when they're working, they're only using a specific set of applications. But one day, out of nowhere, James's account is logged on using a completely different device in a completely different area. And then all of a sudden, it shows that they're trying to access information that they've never used before. Now, since this is outside of all of James's normal activity, Defender is going to pick up on that change, and depending on the level of a risk, it's going to send an alert to the admins, and it may even potentially block James's account from accessing data. And so in this example, James's account may have been compromised. Maybe it's because his password wasn't strong enough, or maybe their organization didn't use multi-factor authentication. It can be for a number of different reasons. But Defender for Identity will help your users secure their account profile by providing your admins with security insights as well as best practices. Now remember, when your organization encounters an attack, usually that attack isn't going to try to go for the highest level of access first. Instead, what they're going to try to do is find a low-privileged user and attack them. Maybe they weren't up to date on their security, or they access a clear text password. But once they're in, things move quickly. And the attack will continue to move until they reach an admin or domain account, or worse, your data. Now, probably the biggest benefit of Defender for Identity is that it's designed in such a way that you can cut down on unnecessary alerts. And this means that your team can focus on the most important security tasks in real time. So as far as M365 with Microsoft Defender goes, this is going to be a great tool to help protect the messages and the data that's going in and out of your organization. Now, you might know the service by its old name, Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, but this is part of the Defender that is focused on protecting your organization from threats like malicious emails or the potential leak of sensitive or even confidential information. Now, you have a few different options when it comes to purchasing Defender for Office 365. We have 2 different plans, which include capabilities for each one. With Plan 1, you're getting protection from malicious attachments and potential phishing links. It also has tools that integrate with the Office 365 tools like SharePoint, as well as OneDrive and Teams. This integration is going to provide an added layer of protection, so when your users share and collaborate on files, they're protected. Now, Plan 2 is going to include everything in Plan 1, but it adds different automation tools to your security plan. It has real-time investigation and remediation, as well as their simulations that are designed to help protect your Office 365 suite. Now, another great feature of Microsoft Defender is the endpoint protection. The purpose of the Endpoint Defender is to help your organization protect its endpoints. With endpoint security, this allows you to secure your user's device, like laptops or phones, and just, keep in mind, an endpoint is a point of access into your network, and ultimately, that access point is your data. So Defender is going to protect you by collecting different samples of information from all the different operating systems and compare all of that behavioral data and that it's collected, and it's taking those signals and it's turning them into insights. Now, from those insights, Defender can detect malicious activity, and ultimately, it's going to provide you and your organization with recommendations to better protect your endpoints. Now, the way that Endpoint Defender helps defend your enterprise's entire network, and it can also take all of those great protections and integrate it with other Defender services like Intune and Azure Security Center, which you looked at in Part 1. Now, the last area before we actually take a look at Defender inside of the portal is I want to show you the Cloud App Security component. As more and more organizations move into the cloud, there are huge benefits like increased availability and fault tolerance that provide organizations with more flexibility. However, once you move to the cloud, the only truly way to leverage all the benefits is by ensuring that your data is protected. Now, Microsoft Cloud App Security is what we call a Cloud Access Security Broker. This is a SaaS, or software as a solution service, and it works on the SaaS level between the cloud user and the cloud provider. And this is going to give your organization insight into your services and ultimately control on where your data goes and how it travels and who uses it. Now, the main purpose of a Cloud Access Security Broker is to help address any types of gaps by providing visibility and threat protection. So why don't we go ahead and log into the Cloud App Security Center inside. So I'm logged in to admin.microsoft.com, and I am logged in with an admin profile. Now, all of the different tools and different features that we're going to look at today really depend on your level of access in your organization. So if you're not an admin, you may not have access to all of these different features. But since I am logged into as an admin, I'm going to start on my M365 Defender main page. And what I want to show you is the Cloud App Security Portal and how you can actually monitor how your data is being used through all your different cloud applications. So from the Defender portal, I am going to scroll down and we're going to look for more resources. And this is going to show you different resources that are available in M365 Defender to help really manage compliance and security throughout your entire organization. And so you can see we have the Compliance Center, which we'll talk about later on in Module 4, Azure Active Directory. And we're going to scroll down and we're going to select Microsoft Cloud App Security. And once we select Open, we're going to be redirected to the Cloud App Security dashboard. Now, you can actually edit this dashboard to something that works better for you. We'll talk about some of the different open alerts. Now, I am in a demo environment, so your organization's dashboard may look just a little bit different than mine. So from the top of the Cloud Discovery page, I want to show you all of the different options inside of the portal menu. We're going to select Discover, and we are going to go to the Cloud Discovery dashboard. Now, this dashboard right here is going to give you a detailed view of all of the different apps that are either sanctioned or unsanctioned. And what we can do here is we can actually change out the time frame. We have the different snapshot reports, but we can see all of the different applications that are being used inside of our organization. We can see all the different IP addresses, how many users, and we actually even have them different widgets is what they're called, where you can sort it by the traffic, the uploads, maybe the application itself, or the different transactions. And so what I really like about this dashboard, it gives you a lot of flexibility on what you can change in your views and what's ultimately most important to you. So let's actually select our discovered applications. And what you can see here is these are all of the different applications inside of our organization that's accessing some type of data. And so we can see if we hover over here, we can see that we have our score, our upload, transactions, usage, and we can even sort it from least to greatest. And you can drill even deeper into each of these different applications. So let's say, for example, I am going to select, let's go ahead and select Zendesk. So this is where we can see the first time that this application came into our organization, the different download traffic, the number of users who are using this application in particular, the IP addresses, and as you can see, you can drill down into information of what's going on with this application in particular. So we can see the different compliance offerings, any type of legal information, and this is what's going to help you figure out, is this an application you'd want to use in your organization? Or is it something that maybe you need to look at something, maybe make some changes? So we can also see all the different IP addresses, and you can export this, either the top IP addresses or all. And the nice thing about everything inside of the Defender dashboard is everything's customized. So if you wanted to change the number of columns or the width or what you're viewing, you can even change the time frame. Now, you can see you can even sort your apps either by sanctioned or unsanctioned. And then if you wanted to create other tags that are specific to your organization, you can do that as well. So I do want to select the users here. Now, you'll notice this is kind of similar to that IP address tab, but this is where you can look at the individual users and you can filter then by user information, the amount of data that you use, the transaction. So in case your security team wants to dive a little bit deeper, this is a really good place to start. Now, all of the information that's in these tabs, what they're going to do is they are collecting everything from your traffic monitors and it's uploading it automatically. Now, you can choose to manually upload it as well, let's say from your firewalls or different proxies. But what's nice about this is going to pull all of that information together and it's going to allow you to basically dig deeper inside of the Cloud App Security module. Now, if I wanted to create, let's say, my own report, what I can do is if I select those ellipses, those 3 dots in the top right-hand corner, what I can do is I can create a Cloud Discovery Snapshot report. Now, what I would do is this is where I could fill in all of the different details, maybe like the traffic logs, and it would allow me to upload and generate a report here. So this is if I wanted to create just that one snapshot report. Or if I wanted to select something like a continuous report, this is where I would still go to that same ellipses, but then what I would do is I would say I want to configure an automatic upload. Now, I don't have any data sources connected at the moment, but this is where you can actually add different data sources. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select add a data source. And now you can see I have all of my different appliances if I wanted to select one. And then I can then pick the receiver. So if you wanted to create your own report, you have a couple different options with there. Now, one other thing that I want to point out is that on this page, you can actually connect your own apps using the app connector. So I am actually going to go back up here to the main page in the dashboard. And then what I can do is I can go to my Cloud App Catalog. And this is where if I wanted to add any type of different applications or review them, I can do that here. So again, the nice thing about the Cloud App Security module is you have the ability to deep dive into all these different categories, and you can really do different investigations. So coming back out to this dashboard, we can see here, I have my open alerts, and you can see that they're rated on severity levels. Good news, it doesn't look like anything's too crazy going on in my environment. And we can also see, we have a user that we might need to do a little bit more investigation on. So there might be something fishy going on with their different applications that they might be using. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different alerts. All right. Now we can see here an activity from an infrequent country. So remember our character from early on, James? This might be there. We had some type of logon or a password breach. And so we might be accessing an application or trying to access some type of data from a country or a location that we don't normally see. So if we wanted to dig a little bit deeper, so we can actually see this is an admin account. So this is definitely one we want to check out right away. And we can see important information about this particular user. So this was accessed inside of the US for the first time in 25 days, meaning maybe James is based in another country, maybe Germany or something like that. And now we're accessed inside the US, and James's role doesn't really require them to travel. So, this might be something we want to investigate a little bit more. And so we can see where the logon, we can see the device, the date, information, everything. So this gives you that full insight into looking into the different activities. Going back to the dashboard, now we can see that user, it also gave us, based off of the suspicious activity, it actually flagged that user of, hey, we might want to do a little bit more research. So in this case, we have our investigation priority level. Now, the risk level is still marked as low. So, maybe they're not trying to access any sensitive data or confidential data or even exporting data. But this allows you to see how the score has changed. It looks like they've modified a file, they logged on. You can see that the score definitely increased from that country logon. So then in this case, again, in a demo account environment, I don't have necessarily all this information, but then that's where maybe from your security team, you want to see the manager, maybe reach out and do a little bit more of an investigation. So this is a great tool, especially if you wanted to do more investigation when it comes to your applications. And you also still have access to that activity log. And if we actually come here to our connected apps, this is where, again, you can see I have 2 connected apps. If I wanted to add more, we can see that I have some different ones. So let's say if I wanted to add, let's say Salesforce. I'm going to just call this my Salesforce CRM. I'm going to connect. And now you can see that there's even some recommendations. Now, I am in a demo environment, so I'm not actually going to go through, and I'm also not the Salesforce admin, but you can see that there are other steps that I need to take in order to connect this information. So this is protecting your data, your organization, as well as any cloud apps that you might be leveraging in that organization, just to make sure you know who, what, when, where, why your data is being used and by what applications. So this is the endpoint cloud app security environment. So why don't we just pop back into our slides really fast, and we'll continue talking about other options inside of the Microsoft Defender. So now that we've had a chance to actually log in and check out some of the features of Microsoft Defender, let's chat about some of the different management tools and capabilities inside of M365. Now, this is our 5th of 6 lessons in Module 3. And we'll do another tour of the Defender portal, as well as some of the different technical dashboards that are available inside of that M365 portal. And all of those are going to be designed to give you full insight into the security of your environment. So, depending on how long you've been working in the Microsoft universe, I have another name change for you, and this might be a product that you have been familiar with in the past. We're going to discuss the M365 Defender Portal, but it actually used to be known as the M365 Security Center. Now, the main purpose of the Defender Portal is to provide you with insight into the health of your organization. In addition, the Defender Portal will allow you to configure your users and devices. And what's extra cool about it is it's going to send you alerts when something a little bit fishy happens in your organization. Now, one of the bigger tools inside of the Defender portal is the Secure Score. This score is going to be based on your overall security rating. And what does that mean? That means the higher the score you have, the better your organization is doing security-wise. Now, I really like this score because it's giving you a report of your current health status, and it's providing details on how you can possibly improve it. Now, one other nifty feature is that you have all of the different Microsoft products, and it's going to provide recommendations for the entire Microsoft ecosphere as well. So currently, the Microsoft Secure Score supports recommendations for Microsoft 365, which includes Exchange Online, Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, as well as Cloud App Security. And, everything's always getting updated. New recommendations are going to be added to the Secure Score all the time. So let's go ahead and log back into that Defender portal, and I'll show you the Secure Score and a few other things as well. So I'm actually logged in to the admin.microsoft.com, but before I had the Defender portal already open for you. And I want to show you how you get there from the Admin Center. Now the Admin Center, again, all of it's going to be dependent on the access and the permissions that your organization has granted you. So you'll notice on the left-hand side of my screen, I have a number of different menu options, but under Admin Security is where I'd like to actually go to access that Defender portal. So once I select Security, I'm going to be redirected to that M365 Defender portal that we took a look at when we looked at cloud security. But this is where I can actually go into my dashboard, and you can see here there's a little bit of a tour here, but we have these cards. And these cards are really neat because you'll notice first what we have is our Secure Score. Then you can see I can have different options and different cards that are basically giving me that quick snapshot where I log into one place and I have a full overview of what's going on in my organization. But let's look specifically at our Secure Score. Now, that Secure Score is going to be based off of everything that's going on in our organization. Now, we can see we have some things based off of identity, our different apps, and we can even view our historical data as well. But what I want to do is I want to select Improve My Score. And this is going to give me all sorts of different actions. And so even, let's say that your organization, this is your first time really looking at your security, which I hope this isn't your first time, but let's just say it is. And, you have a real low security score. These improvement actions are going to give you a great starting place. And on top of that, they're going to walk you through how to remediate maybe some security issues going on inside of your organization. So we can see right here, they're also ranked on order of importance and what's going to have the greatest impact on your overall security score. So we can see, imagine this, requiring multi-factor authentication for your administrative roles. And just a real quick topic on multi-factor authentication. I know you discussed it a little bit in part 1, but we don't want to rely on just passwords. So, let's say that I'm in the break room and we're hanging out and, I have my coworker, Nick, who comes in and, we're just talking and I happen to, we say my birthday's coming up and I talk about like my favorite pet or maybe the street I grew up on. And all of a sudden, Nick might be able to piece all of those things together and figure out my password. Now, I'm not saying all of your coworkers are out to figure out your password, but multi-factor authentication allows you to add an extra layer of protection. So if you have a Nick in your life or maybe a Nick out in the world trying to break into your organization, once they get your password, they can't get in. So in this case, maybe it's something I know or something I have like facial recognition. Maybe it's some type of key on your phone or a tool like an authenticator. All of that is going to add that next level. And especially for administrative roles, oh my goodness, yes, you definitely want to add that. So if I wanted to actually dig into that improvement action, we can then see I have different action plans, all right? So it's something that I definitely need to address. Now, when are we going to plan it, or am I going to accept that risk? And, all of the things here as far as your security score, I want you to understand that these are recommendations. We're not going to, force your hand and make you make these changes. They're recommendations to ultimately help improve your security posture. So if you're going to accept the risk, that's fine. Or if you're going to go through a third party, or if you have some other plan to help mitigate that potential risk or ultimately solve it, that's fine. So you can add those notes. Now you can see if you wanted to dig a little bit deeper of why multi-factor authentication is important, you can see what it protects against, and you can also see the users that it's going to impact. And so in this case, we're specifically looking at users who have administrative access, meaning that they have that elevated access and may have access to some confidential data or data that you don't want to get out. Now, what I really like though is this implementation stage. So even if, maybe you're a newer admin or you have someone on your security team who isn't as familiar with the workflow, it's going to walk you through step by step on how to make that change. And so you can see there's even learn more about all the different security defaults. And especially since this is a fundamentals course, this might be your first introduction into working with a Microsoft product like this. Get familiar with the Microsoft documentation. This is honestly one of my best friends inside of all of the different tools, because if I don't know something, it gives me the ability to research it. And now for some of you who are planning on taking the SC 900 exam, yes, you will need to know how some of these items work or be able to recognize where they fall into place. But in your day-to-day job, you have the ability to look things up. And so that's why the documentation, I think, is really important to get to know. But anyways, when we look at the implementation, we can see it links you directly where you need to go inside of Azure Active Directory. And then it walks you through all of the steps as well as the recommended minimum roles that you should select. Now, you can always go above and beyond in your security stance, but we're giving you our recommendation based off of the best practices here at Microsoft and what we've learned over the number of years, as well as from our partners and existing customers. And then it will even give you the implementation status. And look at that, all of the friendly links to the documentation. So this is what's really great about the Secure Score is it's going to give you more than just, hey, something's wrong. It's where the Secure Score has all of the steps on how to actually resolve it. Now, we can see that if I were to make those changes here, that would improve my score by 14%, which is a pretty good grade push. I wish I had that when I was in school. But you can also export these as well. So if you wanted to export your secure score, if you wanted to do any type of filtering. So did you want to filter basically, maybe you have someone responsible for identity, we can just sort of filter anything that would improve our security or our recommendations that are all about identity. So the secure score is giving you all of that information in an easy to use place. Now, we also have our different metrics and trends that we can go into. We can see how they compare over time. And what's even better, we have our score, so your organization. And then you can also set up a custom comparison. But, how are you doing compared to organizations of your size or similar to yours? So you can see, what changes that you might make to ultimately improve your security posture. So also with our secure score, when we go back to that dashboard, again, our secure score is the first thing that's automatically going to default there. But if you wanted to change any of those cards on that dashboard, we can select add cards. And I happen to have all of mine already on here, but you can also move them around as you'd like. And then you can delete them. So if I didn't want that card on here, it's not gone forever. I can always choose to go back and add it. So this is the Microsoft Defender portal. We'll take a look at it throughout the rest of this course, but I would recommend, especially if you are new to the Defender portal, take some time, explore it. There's a great tour when it's your first time logging in. It'll offer you a tour, take you through, and just kind of get familiar of all the different tools and the metrics that are available. The more information you have, the better. So why don't we go ahead and jump back into our slide deck, and we'll continue talking about all the other different features inside of the Defender portal. Now, like I said, exploring the Defender portal is going to be one of the best things you can do once you access your admin profile. And that's because I want you on your own to take a look at the different reports and incident features inside of the Defender portal. Now, there is an entire report section that has every type of security report that you could possibly fathom. And this encompasses your entire organization. Now, there are general security reports, that's going to give your admins the different trends and security statuses, but you can do so much more. You can download the reports, like say on your endpoints, and see, what the health status of your different devices in your organizations. Or you can build out, let's say, an email and collaboration report that's going to provide different recommendation on how to improve your security stance as different users in your organization send communication. In short, these reports are going to be your best friend when it comes to monitoring your different workloads across Microsoft. And it uses all of the same information that we've been discussing today. But what happens when there's an incident? Keep in mind that an incident just means that, if there's an alert on some type of suspicious activity. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's been a breach. But these incident alerts are going to be automatically generated by the endpoint defender. Once your security team gets that alert, well then, that's where they plan their next step. Maybe they need to figure out where the attack started. And once they know where it started, they can then begin their investigation and figure out the entire scope of the attack. And then from the scope, figure out where it happened, the method that was used, and then we're figuring out the severity of the attack and the next best steps. In the Microsoft Defender 365 portal, you can manage all of the different incidents on your devices and your users' accounts, and even your mailboxes. All of the incidents are going to be automatically assigned a name based off of that alert. From there, you and your team can investigate and manage the full process. Now, we just have a short little lesson left in Module 3. This is going to be a specific service that's focused on your mobile device management and your mobile application management. That is Microsoft Intune. Our focus is to support how your organization manages all of its devices, phones, tablets, or even your laptops. We'll look at how you can set a specific policy to control your applications. So, what Microsoft Intune is, it's a mobile device management, or MDM tool, and a mobile application management tool, or MAM. So with Intune, it can be used, like we said first, as a mobile device management tool. This is what we use for devices that are owned by your company. Think of this like your business laptops, your phones, And you have full control over these devices with Intune. Now, what's really nice about this is that you have a complete inventory of all your devices. And if there's updates, well, you just push them out. And then you can see the standing of all of the corporate health standards with each device. Now, a huge benefit is, let's say that, you have someone in your organizations and they jailbreak a corporate device. Well, once it's jailbroken, immediately blocked. And let's say, for example, if someone loses a device or it's stolen, you can immediately remove all of the data so that way you're not risking any type of compromise. Now, on the other hand, we have the Mobile Application Management Tool, or you might know it as MAM. What this does is it gives your admins the ability to protect your data at an application level. So where this is really nice is if you wanted to have a bring your own device policy, you as an organization still have control over your data at the application level, meaning you can control what applications can access that data. And that way, you're not enrolling that entire device in Intune. Again, this is giving you control over tracking of how, what, when, where, and why your data is being collected. And if someone loses their phone or if it's stolen, you can wipe your corporate data without impacting, your user's device. So you have control of the data that's regarding your organization, but it doesn't impact anything outside of that. Now, inside of Intune, you have what's called an endpoint security node. And this is where you can configure and manage all sorts of different security tasks. In the endpoint security node, you have the capability of looking at all your different devices and seeing which device is compliant with the policies that you set, and also how to remediate them. This is where you set a security baseline. So let's say, for example, I wanted to automatically require a passcode, maybe if I wanted to have certain strength or different numbers, characters, or if I wanted to disable maybe a basic authentication. This is where you get to set those different baselines. And the other thing in the endpoint security node is that you can set your different firewalls, your antivirus tools, and you have one place where you're managing all those different segments. Now, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint can also integrate with Intune. And so that way it can help you prevent any type of security breaches and ultimately the potential impact of that breach inside of your organization. And, it's nice because it's a Microsoft product. So you have the ability to use that role-based access control easily. And so you can limit what a user can and can't do within that device based off of their role. So I hope you see, as we look at the different endpoint security tools, Intune, all of that, this is all going to come together and that Defender dashboard is going to be a great spot for you to look at. And that, like I said, it was a short little lesson, but that actually wraps up the second half of Module 3. So let's just do a quick recap. So far, we've learned about Microsoft Defender for Microsoft 365 Defender and all of the different components. We've also looked at the different identity and endpoints and all the different applications that you can connect and ultimately have that bird's eye view. We've looked at how you can manage all of those different capabilities as well as even integrate a service like Intune. All of this information is available for free on the Learning Path, and you can find that at aka.ms/scfunpath. So you know what? We've been going for a while. Why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute break? This will give you a chance to stand up, maybe stretch your legs, grab a drink of water, and we'll see you back here for our final module of SC 900, and that's going to be Module 4. to our last module, and we're going to discuss the different capabilities inside of Microsoft solutions that can help support your compliance efforts. And in this module, we have 5 different lessons that we'll be looking at, starting out with just discussing the different capabilities that are designed to help you with your compliance and ultimately protect your data. We'll also look at the different insider risk capabilities and the auditive capabilities. And then finally, we'll close out the day by looking at some of the different governance tools and capabilities inside of M365. As a reminder, this module counts from anywhere from 25 to 35% of your overall exam. And all of this information that we've discussed is available on the learning path at aka.ms/scfunpath. So why don't we go ahead and get started by describing the compliance management capabilities inside of Microsoft. Now, one of the favorite things that I've ever heard when it comes to data is that data can be considered the new oil. I mean, think about it. Data is power. Data is knowledge. Data is what's giving your organization that competitive edge. And your data is the engine behind everything in your organization. And you're going to want to protect that data. And that way, in case there is some type of breach, you're not facing any type of massive loss. So that probably means that protecting your data is one of the most important functions that your administrative team has. Now, governments are also there trying to protect your data, so they're creating different laws and different policies. Did you know, as an example, as an individual, you have rights to access your data at any point in time. Also, you can have your data deleted at any point in time with your consent. We're going to talk about some of the different retention policies and how certain types of data need to be collected and stored. And these data regulations are going to vary based off of where you are in the world. But what's important to understand is when you are setting up your organization or your cloud environment, where your data is going to live, what laws and regulations you need to consider, and especially this is extra important if you're planning on moving your data from location to location. Now, here at Microsoft, we use something called the Service Trust Portal. And the Service Trust Portal gives you access to different tools and information about Microsoft security and privacy, as well as our compliance practices. And if you're responsible for any type of compliance or governance inside of your organization, I highly recommend that you make the Service Trust Portal one of your best friends. Because inside of the Service Trust Portal, you're going to find your compliance manager. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. But you can also find a number of different documents and resources that are available by industries or even specific regions. So this is a really helpful tool as you manage your data and kind of learn and understand what your responsibility is as a customer. But you can also see Microsoft's responsibility when it comes to compliance and data governance. So why don't we go ahead and log into the Service Trust Portal now? So we are inside of the Service Trust Portal. And the Trust Center, this is going to be where you can find everything regarding our privacy statements, our compliance offerings, as well as the result of our audit reports. Yes, you heard that right. We get audited just like your organization, and we publish all of our audit reports so you can check them out. So right here at the top, you can see the very first thing that we share is privacy, and I'm going to show you some of our different privacy philosophies here in a minute. But where I really like to highlight is our compliance offerings, because you may not know this, but Microsoft actually offers the most compliance, offerings than any other cloud provider. So if you actually scroll down here, you can see a full list of the compliance offerings, our results of our audit reports, and then we have some extra reading for users who may be in specific roles, like think your legal or your risk management. But here, this is where you can see all of the different compliance offerings. Now, you notice that this isn't just for M365, it's for Azure, Dynamics, Power Platform, everything. And one thing that I do want to point out when it comes to the compliance offerings is that these are going to be application or resource specific. So you can see we have them based off of global, so we have region specific, industry specific. So make sure, especially if you are responsible for any of these particular compliance offerings, that you are aware of them and make sure that the resources that you select and you're leveraging do have them. But this Trust Center is going to be a great one-stop shop for everything when it comes to trust. Now, one of the other key areas inside of the Trust Center is going to be your privacy. Now, up here at the top, if we actually go ahead and select privacy and we go to the privacy overview, you can see our privacy statement. So we can see how you control your data, where you can see where it's located, everything. And keep in mind, data privacy and data sovereignty is really important, and that you know that your data is safe and we're respecting your privacy. So again, our audit reports are going to be here. You know, the consent, why we are collecting your data. So all of that information is going to be inside of the Trust Center. Now, I actually want to switch back to the slides and talk a little bit more about privacy here at Microsoft. So inside of the Trust portal, you saw we have our privacy statement. And that's something that's so important to us. I mean, we want to make sure that all of our products and services are running on trust. And one of the ways that we focus on your privacy and building your trust is we've actually created these 6 privacy principles. And we use these when it comes to making decisions about data. Now, this is helping us determine how and why we are collecting data, and then ultimately what we're doing with it. So why don't we talk about these 6 principles? First, we have control. And that control we are putting for you as the customer. You are always going to have total control of your privacy, and you're going to have the tools to make the best choice for you and your organization, which kind of leads us right into the second principle of transparency. We are always going to tell you what your data is being collected for, why we're using it, and what we're planning on doing with it. And that way, you as a customer can make informed choices when it comes to what data you share and maybe what data you don't. And any data that we do collect, you can rest assured it's not being, shared or being sold. It's going to be protected with our strongest security and our strongest encryption. And, we want to protect your right to privacy. This is your legal right as a consumer. And like I said, the data that we do collect, we're not selling it to be used for targeted marketing. So that means if you're chatting in Teams or sending an email, you won't get that pop-up of an ad later. But at the end of the day, the reason we are collecting data is to provide better services to you and really make your overall experience better. And what that means is that we're only going to collect data when we can use it to make your experience with Microsoft better. Now, if you wanted to look at all the different privacy principles in full, again, that privacy principles and the privacy policy are in the Microsoft Trust Center. Now, within the Service Trust portal, we have another great tool, and this is called the Compliance Manager. Now, the service, like the Trust Service portal, is available to anyone, whether you're a Microsoft customer or not. But to get to the Compliance Center, this is only available to customers with an M365 role of a global administrator or something with similar permissions. Now, the Compliance Center is going to give you that 50,000-foot overview of how your organization is performing against the compliance standards that you set in place. Now, one of the best parts about the Compliance Center is that you can set up alerts and really make sure that you're meeting all of those outlined requirements. Now, as an administrator, you're going to have access to the Compliance Manager, which will help you easily set up your compliance standards. Whether that means you're taking inventory of all of your data protection risks, or if you need to implement any type of controls. This is going to be your one-stop shop to help you keep up to date with different regulations and different audit standards. The Compliance Manager will help you reduce your overall risk. And inside, we have a dashboard with a number of pre-built assessments based off of your region or your industry. That way, if you have any admins, they can customize those assessments to better really fit your organization's needs, or, they can just use them out of the box. Now, one thing I really like about the Compliance Manager is it can take some of those really complex, hard to understand languages around some of those different regulations and standards, and it puts them into a more simple, kind of easier to understand framework. And on top of that, you get those out-of-the-box assessments that can help you with your compliance needs. So when you do run those audits, you can see how you can make improvements based off of those different recommendations. You're getting more than just recommendations. You're getting step-by-step guidance on how to implement the solution that was recommended. At the end of the day, this is going to help you prioritize your actions and make sure that you're achieving the optimal compliance standing for your organization. One of the components of the Compliance Manager is something called the Compliance Score. The Compliance Score measures the progress of your recommended improvement actions that are helping reduce your potential risk when it comes to compliance. Now, the key thing that I want you to remember here is that there's a difference between the Compliance Manager and the Compliance Score. The Compliance Manager is a solution that's for your admins to manage and track different compliance activities, where the Compliance Score is a calculation of all those different activities across your entire organization. Now, your Compliance Score lives in the Compliance Manager. Now, one thing before I actually log into the Compliance Manager portal is I want to make sure you understand how your Compliance Score is being calculated. Your overall score is based off of two different types of actions. You have the ones that your organization needs to take and the ones that Microsoft is managing on your behalf. Now, inside of there, we have what we call our action types, or the actions subcategory. And this is going to be based and scored whether they're considered mandatory or if they are considered discretionary. Now, within there, we also have preventative, detective, or corrective. But how about this? Why don't we actually log into the compliance portal, and I'll show you both the Compliance Manager dashboard and your compliance score. Now, the way that you get to the Compliance Center is going to be by going to admin.microsoft.com and opening the Admin Center. Now, you do need to have admin credentials to do this. But from the Admin Center, I am going to actually scroll down and select Show All. And we are going to select Compliance. This is going to take you to the M365 Compliance Center. Now, this whole page that we have here, this is completely customizable. And this is where you can see your organization's compliance standing. Now, you can actually move these cards around if you'd like. You can add different cards. So we can see here, right up front, we have our compliance score. So this is the Compliance Center main page, the admin portal. But let's actually go look at the Compliance Manager. So to select, to get to your Compliance Manager, right here on the left-hand slide, you're going to select Compliance Manager. Now, this is your overview page of your Compliance Manager. So we can actually see our compliance score here. And if you look, you can see that there are two different pieces that's making up your score. First, we have 86 points out of almost a little over 8,000. Those are the ones that's earned by my organization. And then we can see the points that Microsoft is managing and the actions that Microsoft would be responsible. Now, we can see that Microsoft has all their points, but looks like we have some work to do on our end. So if we actually go up and in our compliance score is we can actually take what we call improvement action. So if you actually scroll up to the top of the Compliance Manager, you're going to select improvement actions. And the first thing on the list is a recommended enabling self-service password reset. Well, good news. We already know how to do that. So if you were to add that self-service reset, you can see over here, this would add a potential 25 points to your score. And if you actually wanted to see how these different solutions can contribute to your score, you can select the solutions right up here at the top of your navigation bar. And we can see all sorts of different areas and the number of points that are possible if you were to fix these. And remember how we talked about built-in assessments? Well, you can see all these different assessments that are made by Microsoft. So you can see this data protection baseline. This is actually one of those built-in assessments that are inside of the Compliance Manager. Now, this assessment, it has basically, there's a set of controls that are for key regulations and standards for data protection and kind of that general data governance. Now, with all of these different improvement actions, the more that you take and, the more assessments that you use, the better your score is going to be. And ultimately, the better your compliance standing will be. So moving on to our next lesson, we're going to explore some of the different governance tools that are available in M365. And your organization has all sorts of different data that it needs to protect. This can be the financials, the organization, industry secrets, or even personal information of its customers and your employees. And we have tools inside of M365 called Microsoft Information Protection. Really, its main job is to help identify, classify, and ultimately protect your business critical data. And on top of that, we have something called Microsoft Information Governance that helps manage the life cycle of your data. So that way, you're only keeping the data that you need to, and you can delete the rest in a secure way. Ultimately, all of these tools are going to work together to classify and protect your data to keep it safe for its life, wherever it may go in your organization. And we've already had an opportunity to look at the Compliance Center as far as the different compliance standards that your organization may need to adhere to. But we also have a tool that can help classify your data. So let's say you wanted to protect any type of sensitive data like maybe credit card numbers or bank account numbers or social security numbers. All of these have a specific pattern. And within M365 Compliance Center, you can actually train the system to classify this type of data and then prevent it from being shared outside of the organization or maybe even being shared with the wrong people. Now, on the back end, the way that the classifiers works is it's using artificial intelligence. So you can actually leverage, we have what's called pre-trained classifiers, and these are all ready to use and, they're ready to go with recognizing certain types of data. Maybe it's like profanity or like credit card numbers. And you can even create your own classifiers, like if you have your own unique patterns with your contracts. As you classify your data in your organization, you can actually use different explorers to see the different data that's being classified and how it's being used. And then you can drill down into any label and see where it's stored, the last time it was opened, or who has seen it. And we also have the Activity Explorer to see where labels were changed and when. Now, another way that you can protect your organization's data is through different labels and label policies. Inside of M365 Compliance Center, you can enable labeling your documents or your emails. I want you to think of these like a rubber stamp on a physical piece of paper. You have total control over your labels, and you can customize them to meet your organization's needs. Now, some of the common ways that I've seen people use labels are like personal, public, confidential, or highly confidential. And the nice thing about these labels is that they are stored in the clear text portion of the metadata. So that way, if you have any third-party apps using that data, it can read it and then apply its own protection actions as well. And when you apply the label, it's going to follow the documents or the emails as it moves around. So that means it's always protected, even if that data is changing hands. Now, once you create your labels, you can then create label policies. And these label policies create structure around what can happen, like when a document is labeled a certain way. So let's say, for example, you have a project or a team who's working on something highly confidential. And you create a label policy that will only allow members of that team to view the document. And if they want to remove that label, you can actually require a justification to be sent to your admins before that change can happen. So I want to log back into the Compliance Manager, and I'm going to show you how you can add your own sensitivity labels to documents. So as a reminder, sensitivity labels live inside of the Compliance Manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scroll down here to Information Protection. And here, this is where all of the different sensitivity labels for my organization live. I only have 3 right now, but we can see that we have this confidential finance one. And I'm actually want to show you what it looks like and how it's set up. So we're going to edit this label. Now, first, what we have is we have the name and the descriptions. You'll notice that there's a description for admins and a description for users. Again, those are customizable to you. If we go to next, now you can see the scope. Now, in this case, I'm applying this to files and emails, but you can also set it for specific groups like SharePoint or Teams. So we have files and emails. And now this is the protection setting that I'm selecting. So do I want to encrypt the files and emails, and do I want to mark them? And marking them, think of it as like adding a header or a footer or some type of watermark. In this case, I want both. Now I need to control who can actually access that information. So right now, I am going to determine, I want to configure the encryption settings. And right now, the users and groups, you can see the finance team is going to be the main user and group who have access to this particular data that's labeled highly confidential finance. Now, you can see access to the content doesn't expire, but if I wanted to, I can actually set it to a specific date or after a number of days that label is applied. So if we go next, this is where that content marketing comes in. So I can have it as a watermark and I can customize that text, or I can also add a header or footer or some combination of them. If we go next, this is what's going to then allow us to apply auto labels. So if we don't use auto labeling, it's just going to be a drop-down menu where you can select highly confidential and then it will apply and encrypt the data. But auto labeling, again, it's going to have a set of conditions. And in this case, if it has both an ABA routing number and credit card information, and again, remember, it's using that AI to recognize patterns of data. If it has both of those, it's automatically going to apply that financial confidentiality label to this document or this email. Ooh, and I forgot to mention one thing. Watermarks, which is what we have applied in this label, cannot be applied to emails. It can only be applied to documents. So you can see is when the content matches these conditions, it's automatically going to apply that label. And you can even have a message pop up when a user has met the conditions to apply that label. So I'm going to go ahead and select next. Now you can also add different protection settings. I'm not going to mess with anything here. And again, if you wanted to use it for apply this to your SQL databases, you can also do that. So there we go. We have our label. I'm going to save it. And our label has been saved. So this is where we can then apply the policy. Now the policy here, if we go up to label policies up here in the top navigation bar, you'll see that this is going to protect any of our financial data for our environment, in this case, Contoso. Now, this policy, you'll see I have a setting here. It's already published. But if a user wants to remove this label, so let's say it did have bank account information, that routing number and a credit card number, they just can't remove that label. In fact, they actually have to provide a justification. So now if a user is in a Word document or an email, it's automatically going to apply that label because we have set up that policy. So why don't we go ahead and jump back into our slides and look at a couple of the other compliance tools. A lot of the tools I'm showing you here today are designed to help protect your data from experiencing any type of data loss. I'm sure you've heard at the news at one point in time, another organization who experienced some type of data breach and data loss and the awful aftermath that came from it. Inside of the Compliance Center, there are a number of different tools that are available to help you with your data loss prevention plan. And the way that the data loss prevention plan works is through a series of policies, and those have conditions and actions that are applied to specific locations, like let's say your SharePoint or your Exchange. So if you had a data loss prevention policy in place, you can actually prevent users from sharing any type of sales contracts. And that policy would run in the background, and it can identify any documents or emails that's including those sales contract numbers or like customer information. And then based off of those conditions, it's going to trigger an action to automatically block that email from going out that contains that information. Now, there are data loss prevention tools where you can look for any type of, let's say, suspicious activity, like users copying or printing sensitive data. That way, you can take all of that data and create policies to prevent it. Now, these data loss prevention tools are here to help you no matter which M365 application you're using, whether it's Teams to Outlook to OneDrive to SharePoint. And we know that these tools are here to help keep data from leaving your organization when it's not supposed to. But what about data you no longer need to keep? Because with all of the data that organizations are now collecting and creating, I mean, you can imagine what happens if you had to keep everything forever. It would be pretty insane to try to manage it all. Plus, imagine if there was a breach. The potential risk is absolutely incredible. And that's why you need to understand your industry or your region's retention policies. These policies are going to help you guide you on what needs to be kept and for how long, and when it's time to delete it, how to delete it in a secure fashion. So very similar to some of the other labels that we've discussed so far, you can create retention labels and retention policies. So let's say I have a SharePoint site, and this is for my team, and all of the information in it needs to be retained for 5 years. What I can do is I can apply a retention policy to that SharePoint site, and that policy would apply to all of the same items on that SharePoint site. But let's say there's one item on that SharePoint site that has to be retained for 10 years. That's where I would apply a label to that specific item for 10 years. The 10-year label would override that 5-year policy. And when you apply a retention policy or a retention label, it's not going to force your users to keep those files on their own desktops. So let's say a user deletes that file and it has a retention policy on it. A copy of that document is being kept in a secure location, and it doesn't have any impact on your users. Now, there are some documents that your organization has to keep out, maybe for legal or business obligations. So sometimes you're going to need a record management tool. Now, inside of the Compliance Manager, there's a couple different record management tools to help your organization and maintain and dispose of legal or business records. Now, an admin, when they add something as a record, they can actually block certain activities like deleting a document or modifying that document, and they can track the path of the document and all the related activity. There are retention-related record tools that can help mark and store the record for retention, and then it maintains the proof of deletion at the end of the retention frame. So inside of Module 1, we spent quite a bit of time looking at the different risk and bad players outside of your organization. In this lesson, I want to talk about the risks that can come from inside of your organization. And here's the thing. It may not always be malicious. Sometimes it can be simply an oversight from a former employee or a contractor. And I think it's important to understand when it comes to insider risk, there are a whole bunch of different things that can happen. You can have someone accidentally leak sensitive data, or maybe there's some type of fraud or insider trading going on. All of these are going to put your organization at risk. So inside of M365, you can build out different workflows to help you identify, investigate, and ultimately stop any type of insider risk. There's a number of different policy templates that you can choose from, or you can create your own alerts when some type of suspicious activity happens. Then what it will do is it will actually walk you through the investigation and remediation. And sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it's just reminding of an employee of a policy. Or there's times that it might require a full-blown investigation. And here's the thing. Communication is incredibly important within organizations. But sometimes you need to restrict communication between teams within an organization. Maybe this can be for legal reasons, or maybe you need to protect employee data. Either way, you can set up what we call information barriers inside of your M365 applications. That way, if you do need to prevent groups of employees from interacting with one another, you can do so. So, in our first session, we spent quite a bit of time discussing just-in-time access, where you're only giving a user the access they need for a very specific amount of time. M365 also offers a tool called Privileged Access Management, and this is where you operate under a zero standing access, very similar to the zero trust model we discussed in Module 1. Zero standing access makes it so any user who needs privileged access must request it and only have that access for the time that they need it. This is just another way to protect yourself against any type of insider risk. Now you might be saying, going, hey, privileged access management may sound a lot like privileged identity management. So you might be asking yourself, what's the difference? Privileged access management is defined and scoped at the task level, where Azure Active Directory Privileged Identity Management applies protection at the role level with the ability to execute multiple tasks. Azure Active Directory Privileged Identity Management really focuses on allowing managed access for Active Directory roles and role groups, while Privileged Access Management in M365 only applies at the task level. There's one last area that I want to talk about when it comes to insider risk, and that's what happens if you need to let maybe like a Microsoft engineer log into your environment with you to help out with a support ticket. And remember how I said we really want to protect your data here at Microsoft? I mean, that includes protecting it from us as well. You have total sovereignty over your data. We can't see it unless you give us explicit permission. And that permission and that access comes to what we call the customer lockbox. Now, when you need a Microsoft representative to log into your environment, you have to provide explicit permission for a certain area, and it's for a predefined amount of time. Once that time expires, you have to submit a new request. Now, this actually may sound familiar to the Privileged Identity Management, and there is a difference between the Privileged Identity Manager and the Customer Lockbox. So the Customer Lockbox is allowing a level of access when a Microsoft employee accesses your data. Privileged Access Management allows granular access control within your organization for all of your different M365 tasks. So make sure that you understand the differences between those two. That actually takes us to our final lesson. Can you believe it? This is the last lesson of the full SC 900 class. It's hard to believe we're already here. But for our last area of M365 today, I want to spend some time discussing what tools are available to you and your organization in case you're involved in any type of audit or legal situation. Now, I hope it never happens to you, but there may be a point in time where your organization is involved in some type of litigation. And when that happens, you're going to need to pull some type of information for evidence. Now, the good news is that this information is usually coming in some type of electronic form. Maybe it's emails or Teams conversations. And inside of M365, we have something called e-discovery. This tool allows you to search across all the different platforms and applications. Now, you do need to have some type of administrative role in order to run a search, but it's a very simple process. So when you're running a search, you need to select the areas that you want to search. Let's say, for example, you want to search Exchange and Teams. Well, then what you're doing is you're adding filters like date, usernames, keywords. And that search, what it's going to do is it's going to pull a list of results. And then from there, you get to take some sort of action, like maybe you're exporting the files or you're creating a report. Now, when you're working with the e-discovery tool, there are two different workflows. You have your core e-discovery workflow and you have your advanced e-discovery workflow. With the core e-discovery workflow, you're going to first create a case and then you're assigning a user. That user can search content and it's marking it for download. Now, inside of e-discovery, you can place a hold on content that might be needed for the case. And then once you have all of your content, you can either export it as individual files, or you can create one joint document. And after the legal case is closed, you can actually turn off any holds that you might have placed. And just so you know, there's actually a grace period after you turn off a hold of 30 days, just in case you need to reopen it. Now, really the main difference between the core workflow and the advanced workflow is that you can add custodians to the case. And the custodians are people who have administrative control of a document or an electronic file that could be relevant to the case. And after you search and you collect all the data, it goes through review to ensure that all of the data that's been pulled is appropriate and relevant to the case. Now, even if you aren't involved in any type of litigation, as admins, you may need to audit activity. For example, did an administrator reset a password? Did a user change a setting for a team in Microsoft Teams? A unified audit log supports the search of many users or activities across all of your M365 services. When an admin audits an activity, that audit record is generated and it's going to be stored for 90 days. This allows you to search different activities, IP addresses, users, and so much more. And all of these items can be exported to a CSV file. The advanced audit keeps all Exchange, SharePoint, and Azure Active Directory audit records for 1 year. And keeping audit records for longer periods can help with, let's say, ongoing forensic or compliance investigations. Microsoft now has the capability to keep audit logs for 10 years. At the end of the day, your admins have to have the ability to keep their eye on the activity in your organization. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of Module 4. We've covered quite a bit today. We spent time looking at the Compliance Center and different tools that are available to your admins. Just think about some of the different tools we've looked at. We've looked at labels, data loss prevention tools, audit capabilities, all in M365. All of the information we've covered today, as well as the information in Part 1, is going to help you prepare for the SC 900 exam. Again, all of this content is available for free on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/scfunpath. My recommendation is that you go through each of the modules in the learning path just one more time. Take those knowledge checks. This is a good chance for you to review and maybe see areas where you need some additional studying. And if you are planning on the SC 900 exam, which I hope you are, you can expect about 50 questions on the exam. These are all going to be multiple choice questions, and you won't have any labs. And really, the main focus of the exam is going to be identifying and describing different services and concepts that we've covered in the material. You're going to have 1 hour to take the exam, so it's more than enough time to make sure that you're reading each question entirely and reading all of the answers before choosing your response. Now, I know exams can be incredibly stressful, but I'm confident between these 2 sessions and the learning path, you're going to have everything you need to be successful. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me for both of these SC 900 sessions. I hope you learned something new, and maybe now you have an interest in learning more about security inside of Azure and M365. Good luck to those of you who are planning on taking the exam, and be sure to add these skills on your LinkedIn page and show off those badges once you pass your exam. I'll be sure to see you next time. Bye, everyone.